Looking for some new Core Set 2021 cards? Well, you can go get them from our sponsor, Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom has Core Set 2021 cards up for pre-order right now, so go check it out over at cardkingdom.com. Hey friends, it's Tomer and welcome back to Budget Commander. The latest set, Jumpstart, is still a month away from being released, but the community has already crowned the undisputed most popular commander out of the set. It's Tinybones, Trinket Thief. A big reason for Tinybones' popularity has nothing to do with the card mechanics. Instead, many people have latched onto this card for its cute name and art. The cute factor has taken the Magic community by storm, our own Baby Yoda in skeletal form. Now, I'm not here to debate whether or not a baby-sized animated skeleton is cute or deeply disturbing. For the record, I think it's a mix of both, but the community clearly has a strong desire to build around Tinybones for the cute factor alone, and since clicks are the main way that I judge my own self-worth, I am here to provide the content that you, the viewers, crave. Luckily, my job here is pretty easy because Tinybones isn't just an adorable pile of bones. The card itself is very powerful, quite possibly the most powerful commander from the entire set. Tinybones comes with two abilities. The first ability draws you a card each end step if an opponent discarded a card this turn. Keep in mind that this triggers each end step, not just your own end step, so Tinybones can potentially draw you a card on each player's turn, which in a typical 4-player commander game is 4 cards drawn per turn cycle. The second ability lets you spend 6 mana to make each opponent that has no cards in hand lose 10 life. These abilities make Tinybones the ultimate payoff for a discard deck, rewarding you with tons of card draw for making your opponents discard cards, and also providing a powerful finisher once you've emptied your opponent's hands. All this power comes at a tiny converted mana cost of just 2 mana, letting you quickly and consistently cast Tinybones and be able to recast it a few times if it's removed. All this combines to make Tinybones definitely one of, if not the best, discard commanders out there. So our goal with Tinybones is a simple one. We are building a discard control deck, using super efficient discard engines like Bottomless Pit and Necrogen Mist to eat away at our opponent's hands while getting the maximum amount of card draw from Tinybones' triggered ability. We turn our opponent's discards into further gains for us with discard payoff cards like Geth's Grimoire and Waste Not. While we're doing this, our heavy amounts of removal will clear away any threats that our opponents have managed to sneak into play. With nothing to threaten us on the battlefield and no cards in hand, our opponents can easily be finished off with Tinybones or similar drain effects. But before we break down the deck, I've got 2 disclaimers. First is the deck's budget. Tinybones won't be released until a month after this video is released, and pre-order prices are currently insanely volatile. Tinybones was $60 when I started writing this article yesterday, and is currently $50 as I record this video, and I expect the price to drop way lower once the set hits the shelves. So while I hate to do this, I've decided to exclude the commander's price from the sample deck list. I'm not doing this to be clickbaity or mislead you all, but rather I don't want one super volatile card to drastically change the prices of otherwise relatively stable deck prices. The second thing I want to bring up is that Tinybones is an archenemy deck. I predict that in a month from now, when Jumpstart is released, the Commander community forums will be flooded with threads complaining about how they just build Tinybones because it's a cute commander, and suddenly their playgroups are unfairly hating them out each game and how miserable it's making them feel. So I want to make this very clear. Tinybones is an archenemy deck. Tinybones is a discard deck, which is a form of a denial deck. It's a deck that tries to deny your opponents the ability to cast their spells and denies their decks the ability to do the thing they were built to do. You're making them discard cards that they would like to cast. Generally speaking, casual players, which make up the vast majority of Commander players, hate denial strategies. So you will be the archenemy at the table the moment you reveal Tinybones as your commander. It doesn't matter if your deck is weak. It doesn't matter that you don't have a board state. It doesn't matter that Jimmy is clearly the threat and is about to win the game. Heck, it doesn't even matter if your deck is some janky skeleton tribal deck that just so happens to run Tinybones. You will be targeted first, and you will probably be knocked out first. That's how it's going to be. Being the de facto archenemy isn't a bad thing. It depends on how you react to it. For people who aren't comfortable with automatically being archenemy, I strongly suggest not building a Tinybones deck. You'll save yourself some money and a lot of headaches. Instead, strongly consider putting Tinybones in the 99 instead if you want to avoid being the archenemy. However, for people who are excited at the idea of building an archenemy deck, then you've come to the right place. It makes games harder for you for sure, but the plus side means you get to be the villain at the table, and we all know the villains are more fun than heroes. Lean into the villain role, taunt your foes' vain efforts to stop your vile plans, monologue once you've emptied their hands and crushed their dreams. If you have a good attitude about it, some playgroups can enjoy teaming up to stop you. Now that I've got the disclaimers out of the way, let's go over how to build the meanest Tinybones discard control deck by going over the key cards that make this deck tick. Let's start with the heart of the deck, the discard engines. These are mana efficient ways to repeatedly make our opponents discard cards. Not only do they remove answers and threats before our opponents can cast them, but they also fuel our various discard payoff cards. Two of the best options for this deck are Bottomless Pit and Necrogen Miss, which force each player to discard a card on their upkeep. These work perfectly with Tinybones, drawing us a card on each opponent's end step. Other slightly worse options are great here as well, such as Gibbering Descent, and my favorite obscure discard engine that has flown under the radar of speculators so far is Putrefaction. While super mean to white and green decks, it's incredibly effective at emptying their hands. Our opponents discarding cards fuels our various payoff cards. Tinybones is one of the best, drawing us tons of cards, but my favorite payoff has to be Geth's Grimoire, which has no cap on how many cards it can draw you each turn. Waste Not is another versatile discard payoff, and while it's more powerful in wheel decks, it'll still do lots of work here. We can also benefit off empty-handed opponents with Asylum Visitor. Once we've emptied our opponent's hands, our cheap finishers can drain them to death. Again, Tinybones is one of the best finishers, but we can add similar effects with cards like Quest for the Nihil Stone, Streaking Affliction, Davriel, Rogue Shadow Mage, and Nezumi Shortfang, all draining our opponents once they're empty-handed. Special mention goes to cards that ping whenever an opponent discards, like Megrim, Liliana's Caress, Fell Spectre, and Raider's Wake. While these cards are more powerful in wheel decks that force opponents to discard multiple cards, refill their hands, and then make them discard cards all over again, they are still decent inclusions in this deck as well. However, I do prefer the empty-handed pingers more than the discard pingers in this particular deck. So our goal is to empty our opponent's hands and benefit from it, mostly through card draw. Then once they're empty-handed, we ping them to death with our cheap, efficient finishers. Obviously, this is going to put a target on our back. So the next most important thing for our deck is to load up on removal to deal with would-be heroes trying to foil our nefarious plans. Luckily, Black has tons of fantastic creature removal. The Eldest Reborn is a thematic way to protect yourself while forcing opponents to discard, Drag to the Underworld is a great spot removal spell, and Mutilate is a great creature board wipe. We also have colorless options to deal with non-creature permanents like Ugin the Ineffable. I recommend running a higher than average amount of removal to protect your archenemy status. And that's pretty much it for the deck. Fill the rest of the deck with mana, card draw, interaction, recursion, and tutors, and you're good to go. So now let's put everything together for some sample deck lists. Keep in mind that these prices exclude the price of the commander. The first list starts at $50 excluding the commander. Our goal is to quickly empty our opponent's hands while drawing tons of cards in the process. We keep the board clear of threats by drowning our opponents in removal. Once our opponents are empty-handed and their spirits are broken, we drain them out for the win. The second list is $100 excluding the commander. Our discard package has gotten even better with the inclusion of Gibbering Descent, our mana is much more explosive with Cryptcast and Sol Ring, and our tutors are way better with Beseech the Queen and Dark Petition. The final list is $200 excluding the commander. We've added two more powerhouse cards to our discard package, Painful Quandary and Rankle, Master of Pranks. After that, we blew our increased budget by starting to pick mono black staples like the Demonic Tutor, Necropotence, and Reanimate. And that's it for Tinybones Discard Control. I hope you enjoy terrorizing your playgroup with this tiny menace. And as always, if you're interested in a more in-depth guide including hundreds of card options to building the deck, then check out the article linked in the video description below. With all the commander reviews finally done, I'll be focusing on more budget commanders in the near future, so let me know which commanders you'd like to see next. Until next time, friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to check out similar videos, click on the links here and here.